Minutes, and we'll just give folks a minute or two to join, and we'll get started. But thank you for being on time, and looking forward to working with you.
All right, Ken, I think we're ready to kick this off here.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Ken Spiro. I'm CEO and founder of School Sims, and I'm delighted to welcome, on behalf of the School Sims team, welcome you to this webinar on leadership simulations. You don't have to go far to see the challenges that, and those of you who just heard David speaking about this, the potential for a gap in leaders in the field, either from folks leaving or wanting to get or leaving or now or retiring, in terms of the challenges that everybody's experiencing these days. And that often has to do with the challenges of stakeholder management and the issues associated with having a group of people who have different demands of you as a leader. And often those demands are exclusive of each other. So you really can't keep everybody happy all the time. It's not even a hope. And so how do you navigate that when you know you're going to dissatisfy some group of people all the time, but still got to make the best decision you can? And that's really what it comes down to: having good judgment on the one hand and being resilient on the other. Two skills which you really cannot teach. The only way we get better at them is through experience. And as we're seeing, the School of Hard Knocks is rather painful. And so the opportunity to provide this kind of modality, this kind of opportunity for sitting or aspiring leaders to engage in safe experience so that we can engage with the experience being the best teacher, is something that we're quite excited about. So I'm happy to introduce today our webinar, which will be delivered by Dr. David DeYoung, who is the Division Chair of Ed Leadership at the University of South Dakota. He's also the president of the International Council of Professors of Educational Leadership, or ICPEL. He's a former teacher, principal, superintendent, graduate student, adjunct professor, fundraiser, and volunteer. He's recently won awards in excellence for both teaching and research, and we are delighted to have him here to lead us through this simulation. David, take it away.
Thanks, Ken. So I'm happy to be here today, and this is meant to be for you. So if you have questions, you may go ahead and interrupt me, or you may ask questions in the chat feature. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have today. So my story with School Sims started about 6.5 years ago. And I went to a conference in higher ed, and I kind of stumbled on these simulations at a breakout session in San Diego. And the simulation title was Educational Leadership Simulation, Girls Basketball Coach. And I'm like, that sounds a whole lot less boring than all the other options that I have to go to. So I sat down, and it was this simulation, actually. I experienced about 10 minutes of the simulation, and I was like, this is the best tool out there for current and aspiring leaders. Like, I knew it just in the first 15 minutes. And I started using them in my classes and presentations, and I've now facilitated hundreds of these simulations to thousands of school leaders all over the country. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to share one of my favorite sims. So this is called Girls Basketball Coach, and this simulation begins with an introduction to the actors and actresses. So Ms. Eden Harper Lee, so she's a parent. We're going to see her in a video pretty soon that she comes to a school board meeting, and she complains about the girls basketball coach. We'll also meet Geraldine Harris. She's going to call us about the school board meeting. And you can about imagine the anxiety that any school leader has when they get a call from the media. And another actor in this simulation is our superintendent. So we are a high school principal in this simulation, and we're going to interact with our superintendent as well. So all these simulations begin with a little bit of context. They kind of tell you who you are and what's going to happen. And then we come to our first decision point. So at each decision point, I'm going to be inviting you to decide how we go through the simulation. And these kind of remind me of those choose your own adventure books that you may have read as a kid. I feel like I read them all. I loved them. So this, based on our choices in this simulation, it's going to lead to different videos and different paths. So without further ado, let's dive into the sim.
In this simulation, you're the principal of Mino High School, where the girls' basketball team is having its first winning season in 7 years. The community is rallied around the team in what could be the first state championship for Mino High in 20 years. You come home from the first playoff game, a win, and you turn on the public access channel airing your school board's meeting.
Miss Eden Harper Lee, 44 North Main Street. I'm sorry to have to stand up here like this, but I'm really upset. I have a major problem with the new girls basketball coach at Mino. He thinks he can say anything he wants to the girls as long as they keep winning. My daughter says that he even swears at them during practice. We don't use that kind of language in our house, and it is totally inappropriate for any adult to swear at our daughters. I don't care if he is the winningest coach in school history. Someone needs to do something about this immediately. Good day.
Okay.
You arrive at work the next morning and see that you have 2 voicemails. Select the next button below to hear the messages.
Good morning. This is Geraldine Harris, and I'm the high school sports beat writer with the Herald News. First, let me congratulate you on your playoff win this summer. Sure is big for Mino. I was wondering if, after the board meeting, you'd like to make a comment for the story I'm working on. I'm talking about the motivational techniques used by winning coaches, and I know there may be a bit of controversy around the news that your coach swears at his players. Give me a call back when you can. We are planning to run the story tomorrow. I can be reached on my cell phone at 555-3440.
Okay.
This is Dr. Carver. I'm sure you caught the board meeting last night. After the parent complained about your coach, several board members expressed concerns. They are not happy with this publicity and are worried about the well-being of the girls on the team. Even though your team is doing well, this could be a serious problem. I also know at least one reporter from the Herald News was there. Call me when you get in.
All right. Now that our blood pressure is raised, let's dive into the next.
After listening to the voicemails, you recall an email that you received earlier this year from Eden Harper Lee, the parent who spoke at the board meeting last night. It had something to do with the girls' basketball coach. You search your computer for the email. Select the next button to see the email you found in your sent mail folder.
All right, let's see what the email said.
Email regarding Coach Devenstad, forwarded to David Jeter, Athletic Director. Sent December 22nd, 8:35 a.m. Dave, I think you should take a look at this. Begin forwarded message. To Principal Mino High School. From E. Harper Lee. Date, December 21st, 9:19 p.m. I have some concerns about Coach Devenstad, the new basketball coach. We really miss Coach Hernandez, and I'd like to talk to you about this. Kind regards, Eden Harper Lee.
Okay, so this email was sent to us, and what we did is we forwarded it to Mr. Jeter, who was the athletic director. So that gives us a little bit of context of what is happening here.
After listening to the voicemail messages and rereading the email from Ms. Harper Lee, you decide to take action. How do you proceed? Your options are: 1, do not make any phone calls yet. First, investigate the complaint from Ms. Harper Lee. Or 2, first return the reporter's call. Wait to respond to Superintendent Carver's call. Or 3, first return Superintendent Carver's call. Do not respond to the reporter at this time. Or 4, First, call the parent who spoke at the board meeting, Ms. Harper Lee.
Okay, so we come to our first decision point, right? We have a little bit of context, and now we need to decide how we should proceed with this. So even if you're never seen the sim, or if you've seen this before, I would like everybody to vote, and I'm going to launch a poll. Now, this is an anonymous response. And which one would you do first? If you like the first option, click that, second option, and so on. I see the votes coming in. It's awesome. We have 3 different votes. I like it. Over half of us have voted, and there's 3 different ones out here. Nice. All right. This is why I love simulations. We have all 4 choices in this room right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just 3 minutes, and I'm going to send you into a breakout room, and all you need to talk about is what letter you chose and why. So it's a simple way to, get to know a new person, and just talk about what letter you chose and why. And I will give you a 30-second reminder to close or to come back whenever it works for you. So all the rooms are now open, and you may join the room. Nice. And Ken, would you be willing to join the room to talk to Trent Grunmeyer, please? For those people that are still in this meeting, just a quick side story here. This was the first time that I experienced where I was the only one in the room that thought one way and everybody else thought something else. And I was like, I cannot believe that as a leader, like I'm either way off or there are people that just have different life experiences than me. And I just kind of like, I realized like the power of learning from other people and not just thinking that my answer was right all the time.
What did you choose?
I chose first return the superintendent's call because I had been a superintendent for 8 years. And what I realized was the superintendent has more information about crazy parents or
Sure.
situations than everybody else. And because the superintendent specifically said, when you get in, give me a call. I mean, I can't imagine going against the superintendent when he's my boss and he tells me to give him a call.
Yeah, no, I get that.
All right, we have 30-second break here. So I am going to close the rooms and bring them all back. Dr. Klein, always good to see you.
Good to be here, David. I apologize. I had another meeting that ran a little bit late. So here I am showing up, sliding into third base or second base, wherever you are right now.
No problem. This works out well. I'm glad you're here. I'm just bringing everybody back from breakout rooms here.
Okay, I'll listen carefully and try to catch up.
Have you seen this simulation before?
This one I have not.
Okay. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you met a new person or there was more people in your group. just talking about what letter you chose and why. That's really where the richness comes into play. And I'm going to share the results with everybody. We have 3 people that said the first option, 1 the second option, 9 the third option, and 1 the fourth option. So I'm sure there's good reasons for lots of people on what you chose, and I hope that you had a good time talking about that with somebody else. But since the highest percentage of people said the third option, that's how we're gonna roll here. All right, let's see how this plays out.
Thanks for calling me back. I am glad you saw the meeting. The board was understandably concerned, and I will be calling the parent this morning to investigate the problem. In the meantime, you need to talk to the coach right away. Please update me on that conversation as well so that I can report back to the board as soon as possible.
All right, so our superintendent wants to report back to the board. Here we go.
How do you respond to Dr. Carver? Your options are: 1, I understand. I hope that you'll keep me in the loop as to what the parent says. I'll talk to the coach in the meantime. I'm sorry about this mess. Let me know what else you need from me, and thanks for your call this morning. Or 2, I really feel like this is being blown out of proportion. Coach Devin's dad is doing a great job, and Ms. Harper Lee has a history of making noise over insignificant issues. She is a typical helicopter parent. If we let it rest, I think the whole thing will just go away. Or 3, I'd really appreciate the opportunity to reach out to Ms. Harper Lee first myself. I would like her to feel that the school is responsive to her concerns. If that works for you, I'll call the parent today, follow up with the coach as you requested, and keep you posted on everything as I go forward.
All right, I'm going to relaunch a poll here, and I'm going to let you vote. How would you respond? All the votes are flying in. We have 2 different options picked in this group. Nice. I like it. Okay, now we're going to take another 3 minutes here, maybe a little bit less than that. And all you do when you go to your breakout room is share what letter you chose and why. Simple process. And you may go. One feature that I wish Zoom had was recording of the breakout rooms. And then it would play it all into the, like the big recording. Like if this is where it's just such the richness of the conversation is happening in the groups. Just wish that could be recorded and then played out in the final presentation. I might talk to Zoom about that. Just as we're killing time, is there anybody that didn't join a Zoom room that thinks that one answer is like a really bad answer? And why would it be a bad answer?
I mean, the second one, right? seems to me like you're diminishing the parents' opinion.
Now, would you be willing to say that when I bring everybody back? Because that's perfect.
Sure. I'll even.
Okay. I'm gonna
I'll
bring.
even put my camera on.
Welcome back. Great. It's good to see people back in the main session there. Thanks for joining us. Now, one thing I was talking about at this decision point was which of these responses would be a bad response? So I kind of posed it for a few people in the group that I was in. And Julia, would you be willing to repeat for the larger group what you shared about which answer is a bad answer and why?
Sure thing. I thought the second answer was a bad answer. I felt like it really diminished the parents' perspective and opinion.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. You know, like that reminds me, as school leaders, like whether you're a professor or a superintendent or a principal, or you're some sort of leader of an organization, like our words matter. Our words matter so much. And when we are diminishing people, even when it's on a one-on-one conversation with somebody that we trust, we just need to watch our words because it has an impact that can permeate whatever organization that we're leading. So the group, Julia, actually, I'm going to share the results right now, agreed with you. Isn't that interesting, Julia, that you thought that that was a bad answer and nobody chose that response, right?
That is a relief.
Yeah, you didn't want to be in the majority on that one, did you? Because you didn't have the data. But that's such a great thing to bring up and to talk about. So the third option seems to be the most popular, although people thought that the first option was good. Does anybody want to share in their group? Just unmute one thing that you talked about in your group at this decision point.
I will. A couple of us brought up the point on number 3 that you're trying to rebuild that relationship with the parent that probably has been diminished. And also it's showing your superintendent that you are taking ownership of the situation and not just saying, yep, I'd prefer that you deal with it. And it also gives the superintendent an out to say, when you say, if that works for you, the superintendent can say, no, I'm going to visit with the parent, but you're at least conveying that you want to.
Sure. Great point. I even saw Glenn give a thumbs up. Good job. All right. Most people chose the third option. So we are going to roll with that and we'll see how Dr. Carver responds to this.
I think you make a good point. I'm comfortable with that approach as long as you follow up with the parent right away and keep me posted. I'm confident that you will respond and take appropriate action.
That's great. It's kind of a boost of confidence from our superintendent. That feels good. Let's see what happens next.
You make the call to the parent immediately after getting off the phone with Dr. Carver.
All right, here we go. Put your seatbelt on.
I guess you're calling me because of the board meeting last night. I sent you an email before the winter break, but I received no response. Then when I heard what that man was saying to my daughter, I had to speak out.
Now let's go back to she emailed us. And remember, when she emailed us, we forwarded it to the athletic director to follow up, right? So we did not reply. So she's technically correct on that point right there.
What do you say to Ms. Harper Lee? Your options are: 1, I hear your concerns and I'm going to look into the matter right away. I will be back in touch with you within the next 2 days. Or 2, I hear your concerns and I'm going to investigate. Someone will get back in touch with you after we have looked into the matter. Or 3, I wish you had called me right away. By going to the board, you have blown this incident out of proportion and may even interfere with our chance to win the championship.
Bad answer, don't you see? So I'm relaunching the poll. A or B? Oh, I wish you could see what I see on my. Nice. Almost everybody has replied here. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share it with you right away this time, just because we have 16, or we have 14 people that said the first option and only one the second option. So let's talk about that. Why do we not like B, or why does only one person like B in this situation? Why did we choose A and not B? Would anybody be willing to unmute and share their thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think B is a good one because it says someone will get back to you. And that someone it should be me, because I'm the one that's calling and making this call. So I chose A because it gives me enough time to hear what the parent has to say, for me to investigate it, and then for me to come back to her in a timely fashion to give a response.
Oh, that's so good. I mean, just making sure that as the leader, you know that you're accountable for that as well. Now, somebody shared none of these answers are good to me. Now I added, oh, Glenn, you did. And I added that as an option a couple of years ago, because when I facilitate these in person, I always get somebody fired up, especially when I'm with like more experienced leaders. They're like, none of these answers are good for me. And when I facilitate these, I like as an open-ended response. So Glenn, what would you do in this situation, and why did you choose that?
I didn't like the next 2 days portion of option 1, because if you're going to do an investigation, let's say it takes 3, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to get a phone call back saying you didn't follow through with what you were going to say. So that was really the only part of option A that I didn't like, was giving that definite timeline there. Because if you're going to thoroughly investigate it, if you're going to talk to the coach and you're going to interview players, from my experience from being a building principal and an assistant superintendent, it might take a little bit longer than 2 days.
Sure. Would you just say when the investigation is complete?
Yeah, and then she may ask, well, how long do you think that is? And then you can give them a little bit of information of saying, here's what I'm going to have to talk to some. I'd like to talk to some students. I'm going to talk to some coaches, and it's going to take me some time to do that. And so I wouldn't pigeonhole myself, so to speak, into a timeline on that.
Now, that's great. Thanks for sharing. Now, I bet there's people in here that would say, oh, no, I do want to give a timeline, or I do want to give a definite date. Shane, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if I'm trying to rebuild this relationship with her, she's already assumed that we were going to respond and I didn't. And so I'm probably contacting her every day and just letting her know. I've started my investigation. I've been able to visit with a few individuals, not divulging anything, but really every day almost touching base with her until I can tell her, hey, come on in. We've reached a conclusion to have that conversation.
On the internet?
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Okay, so I see the most people chose A. So let's roll with A unless there's something else. I see Dr. Mason agreed as well. So anything else from the group before we move on?
David, could I add one other point? Yeah, I picked A myself because I think of the ones that are there that it's the best way to go. But the idea of building a relationship with his parents, since I had dropped the ball somewhat in not responding to her first message, I would have really wanted to spend a little more time with her and dig a little deeper on what her concerns are with this basketball coach.
Sure.
I mean, A still fits that. But I didn't learn that much more talking to her on the phone than I did from her statement at the board. And she has other concerns. That's why she sent that original email. So I'd want to talk to her a little longer and get a better feel for all that she's concerned about.
Great point. Yeah. I mean, the more experience you have as a leader, the more you realize there's usually a root cause to what's happening. There's usually more going on under the story than what we know about. Also, Dr. Mason talked about adding an apology. Absolutely. Because as a leader on behalf of a school, we can apologize on behalf of a school or for not replying to her email.
Yeah.
All right. Gonna keep this thing moving here. We're gonna see how this plays out when we choose A.
Fine, I'll be waiting for your phone call.
Close the poll.
There we go. So one thing that I like about her tone is you can't get that in a case study, right? She was sharp with us right there. And her tone and inflection matter. In fact, if we know that so much more of what's communicated is through like tone and inflection than somebody's words, well, this is where you can really dive into it with leaders. Okay, let's see what happens next.
Throughout the day, you conduct your investigation. After speaking with several players, the athletic director, and the coach, you review your findings. Player 1, coach said, "What the hell is going on with you guys? He was mad at us during practice." Player 2, I heard from another player that he said, "What the hell is the problem?" during practice last Tuesday. Player 3, coach was mad because we couldn't hit a shot from the free throw line. I didn't hear what he said, but he was fuming. Player 4, I never heard Coach D cuss. He wouldn't do that. Player 5, I've heard him say hell before, but he never directed it at anyone in particular. Coach Devin's dad, we are so close to the championship. They are such a good team. I was trying to motivate them because they weren't playing up to their potential. I probably went too far when I asked them, "What the hell are you ladies doing out there missing all those free throws?" It won't happen again. Athletic Director David Jeter, I did see that email you forwarded before Christmas. I called her and she never called me back. There are many times when I watch Devin's dad's practices. He treats the girls like athletes. He does push them hard and he definitely gets excited from time to time, but I have never seen him go overboard. Pushing them is why he is winning. He is a good coach, one of the best we've had in years.
Interesting. So those are the results of our investigation, which I'm glad that we made decision points that brought us to that. One thing that I want to point out is I called her and she never called me back, right? But she's accusing us of not replying, which makes me think, like, as a leader, oh man, maybe I should have, when I forwarded this to the athletic director, I should have said, follow up with me, or I should have said, let's get it in writing that I tried giving you a call, but you didn't call me back. Here's my number, or whatever. So I think closing that loop would have made her not so mad, but that's a good leadership lesson in and of itself. Let's see what happens next.
You call Dr. Carver and let him know the results of your investigation. You recommend that a formal memorandum be placed in Coach Devin's dad's school file with a carbon copy sent to the superintendent. You also let him know that you plan to call the parent back again immediately. Dr. Carver agrees with your recommendation and also tells you that he will handle any calls from the media.
All right, I'm going to direct you all to the chat feature. And I want to ask you a question like, yes or no, would you have put a letter of memorandum, or like I'm sure different states call it different things, like a formal, like a reprimand, a written reprimand, or whatever you call it in your state? Would you have put a formal letter in the coach's personnel file? Yes or no? You can put why if you want. Okay, I see people already telling me yes or no. Just to get a pulse. I love the chat feature on Zoom. Yeah. So Shane said yes, any use of profanity in our district warrants a reprimand. Suzanne, yes. JD, no, that'd be an oral reprimand. Ted, no. Tom, not at this time if it's a first offense. Dave, no, that'd be a verbal reprimand. No, an email reminder, depends on the previous history. No, not likely under the circumstances. We wouldn't have any coaches left. It depends on the district and their practice and code. Yes, it does. So we talk about that, like when I facilitate this, we talk about, you need to know the culture of your district on whether or not this is acceptable or no. Like if you don't have any coaches left, if that happens and it is acceptable, well, then you would answer much differently than if in your district, that type of language is completely unacceptable. And I would say that across the whole nation, it depends on the culture of your district. And you need to know that as a leader. Great thing to bring up and talk about. All right. Thanks for using the chat feature. That was awesome. All right. Let's see what happens next here.
How do you contact Ms. Harper Lee? 1, you have the secretary get Ms. Harper Lee on the phone for you and then transfer the call into you. Or 2, you call Ms. Harper Lee back yourself. Or 3, you have your secretary call Ms. Harper Lee and relay the message that the issue has been resolved.
All right, you may vote. Oh, so far it's unanimous. Oh, no, we have a different one in here. Nice. The votes are still rolling in here. Okay, I'm going to share the results. And since we have 87% that say one response, we're not going to dive into a breakout room. So would one person be willing to unmute and share why they chose either A or B? No C's in this bunch here. Okay, I think it's mostly B, and I'm going to go out on a limb that people chose B just to be like back to what we talked about earlier. We're the ones responsible for leading through this situation. Let's take the time to at least call her back from our own phone. It's more personable.
Good afternoon. Thank you for calling me back right away.
What do you say to Ms. Harper Lee? Your options are 1, I'm calling you back to let you know that I've looked into the matter and resolved it. In the future, I would appreciate it if you contact me directly with any other issues or concerns. Or 2, thank you for sharing your concern. We appreciate your feedback. I want to let you know that I thoroughly investigated and have addressed the issue with the coach. Is there anything else I can do for you? Or 3, first of all, thank you for sharing your concern. We appreciate your feedback. I want to let you know that I thoroughly investigated the issue and have addressed it with the coach. I'd like you to have my cell phone number so that you can more easily contact me directly if you have any future concerns about this or any other matter.
All right, you may vote. Nice. We already have 2 of the 3 options and they're neck and neck at the moment. All right, waiting for a few more votes. And whenever I facilitate these, I'm always like, try to like decide, not everybody's a fast processor as a leader. So you have to kind of give people time to process what the responses are. Okay, we have a split vote between second and third option. I'm going to send you into a breakout room for 2 minutes. It's going to be a quick one. 2 minutes and talk about what letter you chose and why. You may go. Ken, I'd love to hear what letter you would choose and why in this scenario.
I'm of two minds. And I think that there's a cultural divide. I think, in terms of age, handing out cell phone information. It used to be that was, you didn't do that with as freely as we do now, right? Because now it is the primary way of contacting. People don't have a house phone or whatever it is, or a landline. But I have an initial reaction, which is, oh, I don't know if I want to give my cell phone out. I do want to be available to her, but at the same time, in the current day and age, no, you kind of might need to give her the cell phone just to assuage. On the other hand, she's somebody who has clearly expressed a willingness to reach out at very little prompting.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I'm of two minds.
As a leader, like, do you want to keep, I mean, it's two very different ways to lead. You want to keep those really concerned individuals close by giving them your cell phone number, they can call it 24/7, or do you want to keep a little distance, right?
Yeah.
I personally give my cell phone number to everybody. I did when I was a superintendent, and I do as a professor, and I'm the only one on my team that gives out my cell phone number to everybody.
Do you feel like most people respect kind of generally accepted boundaries with times to call, et cetera?
Great question. I would say that I get less than one a month.
Okay.
Of something that's like in the night or the weekend. And usually it's for a very good reason.
Okay. That's really nice to hear, actually.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you're in South Dakota, and otherwise they're using the smoke signals.
Oh, Ken making South Dakota jokes on a webinar. Ooh.
Sorry, I just felt the need to do it.
Oh no, that's great. All right, welcome back, the people in the from the breakout rooms. In my group, we were talking about whether or not to give your cell phone out as a leader. Ken, would you be willing to share a little bit about what you explained with that?
Sure. Thanks, David. I feel like, at least from personally, that back in the day, back in the 90s, if you will, where cell phone was more personal as opposed to your landline, which you would give out freely. So I have that still as part of my orientation in terms of giving out my cell phone, although now it's more ubiquitous. That's the way of contacting you. And so the idea of being available means you give out your cell phone. And so I was torn between 2 and 3, both for myself personally, but also what would I think if I step out of my box and into what I think is appropriate practice. I probably would be inclined towards being available with 3.
Great. It's a good reason for number 3. In our group, most people said option number 2. So not saying that one way is right or one way is wrong, but that's a great thing to talk about in leadership on your K-12 leadership team, or teaching K-12 leadership courses, or just leadership in general. So we chose B. Let's see how she responds to that.
I would like to know what actually happened with the coach, because I was really upset by this whole incident. My daughter said the coach was still at practice yesterday.
Okay. Let's see how to respond to that request.
What do you say to Ms. Harper Lee? Your options are: 1, please know that we followed district guidelines and handled the situation accordingly. As much as you may want more specific information, there are confidentiality issues around employee relations that we need to respect. I assure you that the matter has been dealt with. Or 2, I know that you want more information. As I explained, we handled the situation. I am sure that you are not asking me to breach any confidentiality rules. Or 3, Well, there are some confidentiality rules, but I think it is probably okay if I tell you that we did discipline the coach. And if anything like this happens again, we will definitely be taking further action.
All right, I'll throw up a poll here. I'm relaunching the same poll, and you may vote. Nice. The votes came pouring in that time quickly. Now, whenever I lead this in person, I always think about the third option here. And it kind of makes people like uncomfortable if we would choose it. So while I know that the majority of people didn't choose it, I'm going to make everybody on the call uncomfortable right now by choosing it, just to prove a point of how important it is, or how to learn from the bad answers as well. So let's see what C would say.
Correct. Thank you so much.
I'll be down at 2:30.
I love my daughter and I was just sick over how the coach was treating her.
Okay.
I understand confidentiality and assure you that I won't talk about the coach being punished with anyone other than the other parents. Oh, and also I spoke with a reporter from the Herald News and she's supposed to call me back tonight. Would it be okay if I also just mentioned to her that I'm satisfied now that the coach was disciplined for his inappropriate conduct?
Oh, I see lots of smiles out there.
You thank Ms. Harper Lee one more time and hang up the phone with a knot in the pit of your stomach. You had better call the superintendent again to warn him about the information that may appear in tomorrow's paper.
You have completed the simulation. Now let's review your responses and outcomes. On the following screens, you'll be
So
presented
it looks
with
like it
detailed
kicked us
feedback
out
from
of the simulation there. So what I do when I facilitate these with leaders, like we all have that pit in our stomach right now because we slipped up with one sentence. Like, think how easy it is just to appease a parent and give them a little more information than we probably should. But I realized that, so I had you all set up. I had two screens going at this exact decision point long before anybody logged in. So most people chose A. So instead of like starting over from the beginning, let's go back to A and let's see how that plays out. But that's a pretty good decision point. Like, and when I facilitate this in person, I will say, you know, our trust is gained in drops. This is what my dad taught me. It's gained in drops and it's lost in buckets. And in one sentence of losing that trust by saying that we discipline the coach, we just dumped out it in your community, on your staff, with your AD. It's disaster. So let's choose A. I realize that's what you chose, but I just couldn't resist setting everybody up. So here we go.
As much as I would like to know more, I do understand. I will definitely let you know if anything else happens.
You thank Ms. Harper Lee one more time and hang up the phone. You feel you handled the situation professionally and are confident that Ms. Harper Lee will contact you rather than the school board in the future.
You have completed the simulation. Now let's review your responses and outcomes. On the following screens, you'll be presented with detailed feedback for each of the choice options you selected. You may print and review the feedback. If this simulation is part of a group activity, be prepared to discuss your feedback during the simulation debrief portion of the program.
All right, so there we go. That ends the simulation. We kind of went through each decision point during the time. So instead of going through the feedback report right now, I'm going to turn it over to Ken Spiro. And can you take it away right here, Ken? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, David. That was great. I appreciate it. And, you know, a couple of things in that you noticed, you know, one of the things from the mechanics of a sim is that there was no back button and that David had to have a second one open. And that's by design because of this opportunity, right? That we want people to, you know, we often make mistakes by intentionally or unintentionally. I mean, make bad decisions. We don't make mistakes intentionally, but the issue is not always whether you get it right, but how you deal with the blowback, because there's always blowback. And so having preparation the opportunity to have that experience is important. And so dealing with good decisions, bad decisions, and obviously participants can always go back and play the other pathways, right? It's not just about a one and done exercise. And that's really one of the things that we find so exciting about this modality. I'm going to share my screen for just a sec. And it really is the flexibility of what simulations provide as a modality, that they can be utilized whether you're running them in person, on Zoom, in person, whether you're doing them synchronously or asynchronously. The modality can work because, as you saw, the conversation, the opportunity for the discussion with the facilitator, with a coach, with a partner, with a cohort, that's where a lot of the learning comes out. And in the conversation, one of the breakouts, somebody expressed that the observation of that the value is often in the perspective sharing that happens amongst participants. And that really is a key issue for us, which is, this issue of critical thinking. We will each approach these issues from our own perspective and apply our critical thinking, which is different than the person sitting next to us. And that opportunity to hear from that other person in a peer-to-peer manner enhances the learning dramatically. And especially when you get to decisions like we had one earlier on, where the issue was totally contextual with what's going on in your district or what's going on in your building or what's happening in your classrooms. All of those things can be very, very localized. And that opportunity to have that discussion is incredibly important. And just so you know, you can see more information at our website. And I'm sorry that this is small, but we have a whole library of these simulations. If you're not familiar with them, you can see them at schoolsims.com. And we continue to develop new ones and looking for opportunities to address problems of practice as they manifest. As I don't have to tell you, there's no shortage of problems out there that we could benefit from having the opportunity to simulate them. And I would offer to any of you that if you're interested in having this was an open webinar that we like to do to have people from all walks of K-12, whether it be in higher ed or whether it be from the districts or from school buildings, to have an opportunity to interact, to have that shared perspective. But we'd be delighted to, if you wanted to try this out in your district or with your faculty in your program, if you haven't had this opportunity more broadly, to have this kind of exercise with you directly. And so please just let us know. You can reach out to us and we'd be happy to get that scheduled, because one of the things that we have found is seeing is one thing, but doing is believing. That opportunity to provoke that conversation and hear that insight that you've not heard before. And especially around some of the more controversial or confrontational issues that we're going through these days, where there's distinct differences of opinion. And the fact is that these stakeholders exist. We can't get rid of them. So we have to be able to interact with them, and we have to have that opportunity. And one of the other benefits, and I'll close with this and open it up to any questions, is the power of framing. Right, so this was a girls basketball coach simulation, right? So we could frame it as that. We're dealing with an issue relating to our sports team. We could do this as a difficult conversation simulation, right? Because we prompt it with dealing with a potentially difficult parent. On the other hand, as per what David ended with, we could make this a climate simulation, right? What kind of climate are you looking to establish in your building or in the district? And have that be the frame around which the discussion happens during the simulation. So you can incorporate the sim into any course that you might be teaching or any PD. You can assign it into a PLC because there's a particular issue going on. Maybe your teachers or administrators are dealing with, or your APs are dealing with a number of angry parents. So here's what we're not going to simulate the particular issue that maybe parents are angry about because that's too hot. But we can have one deal with, here's an angry parent. Let's talk about strategies for dealing, for listening, for hearing, for empathizing, for navigating the distinction between the outside and the inside climates that we're trying to establish, but utilize that for the betterment of wherever you're taking that with your particular audiences. So with that, it brings us to just about the end of our time. But happy to answer any questions that anybody has and respond to any comments or feedback that anybody would like to provide. And I would like to thank Dr. David Jong for his excellent facilitation and the insights that he provides, as always, during our webinars. So thank you. And it is a pleasure to see you all. And if we don't end up talking, wishing you all a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. And hopefully everybody has some nice plans and has nice weather.
Ken, could I add one comment?
Please do.
Yeah, I wanted to say I really appreciate you involving people in these webinar presentations who have had opportunities to work with the Sims, because there may be many of us on the call that have really worked with that particular Sim numerous times. But I always enjoyed David's presentations and his way of facilitating. And I think we still learn from each other when we have the opportunity to watch something that you're very familiar with, but just done a little differently with a different approach, different personality. I think there's a lot to be gained from that. So thank you for offering this. And thank you, David. Good job.
And thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. I love it that when people lead them a little bit differently, because there are so many different ways to facilitate them. And when we all learn from each other across the country, I mean, we can deliver some pretty rich experiences for, current and aspiring leaders throughout the country. So great point, Tom. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I was just going to echo, what Tom just said. I think that's right on. Ken, I think, I learn something every time I come on to one of these. The more I use them, the more I get more familiar with it. But the statement you just made about framing I've been struggling with that, trying to, what's the focus or how are we doing it? But to create a framework that aligns, whether it's with a course, with a topic, with, I find that very powerful. Thank you.
You are very welcome. And I think that is the wonderful thing, when it comes back to what you had said during the breakouts about the communication between the discussion that's provoked. Mm-hmm. That when that becomes the key focus, then the question is just how do you tap into what is on the participants' minds, and then just give them, from an engagement perspective, the opportunity to talk. And in essence, and there's plenty of research on this. It's an area obviously near and dear to my heart. There was an article called How Stories Affect the Brain. And it relates to research that was done in terms of what is that element. We all know that stories are incredibly compelling. Storytelling is an incredibly engaging tool. But what's the mechanism by which that happens and why it works for humans, not just here, there, or ages or industries, et cetera? It's everybody. And the research bore out that it's actually, when we're engaged in a story, it's oxytocin is released in the brain. And they did this by doing blood draws. So this was actually pretty serious, actually pretty invasive research. But that means that we're feeling more generous and trusting to those that we're talking to, or we're engaged with. And so the opportunity to, even around these confrontational issues or these heated elements that are out there that are really, really difficult and scary to deal with, we can at least feel connected with others who are experiencing the same thing by engaging in a sim. And the opportunity for that interaction, to move it in a constructive way, allows for. So again, framing it, whatever is relevant, is a wonderful tool to utilize and harness any of the simulations.
And Ken, I could tell you, I've had mild pushback from students on occasion about the use of the girls' basketball coach, because it's a high school scenario. And they would say, well, I'm elementary, I'm middle, I don't have a team. I said, yeah, but you probably have a band. Oh yeah, we have a band. Or you have a chorus. Yes, we do. I said, you could imagine the exact same thing happening coming from a band director, from a choral director, because those folks can get pretty passionate when they're preparing for a concert or they're preparing for an adjudication. And it wouldn't be uncommon at all for the exact same comment to be made to that group, even if they are little kids. And they understand that actually that certainly could happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. That's great. Okay. Anybody else?
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate taking your time, and we'll send the recording out as Brian mentioned. So I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day,
Thank you,
everyone.
David.
Thanks.
Thank you.